Windows Vista. Some remember it for its revolutionary interface, and some for its tendency to bring their computer to an absolute crawl, and also perhaps the lack of driver software. But was Windows Vista truly as bad as everyone remembers? Well, I took the time to install Vista on our old HP laptop to get as close of an experience to how it was back in the day. And here's how it went. Today, if you ask anyone the question of which Windows version was the worst, most would say it was Vista, and some would maybe say it was Windows 8. And don't worry, we'll get to that video eventually. When Vista was released in January of 2007, it was hated due to many reasons. But mainly, the lack of driver support, at least in the beginning, was a huge issue. Secondly, many computers at the time coming off of XP were not powerful enough to run Vista properly. Vista at minimum required 8 times as much RAM compared to XP. So unless you had a powerful PC, Vista would run like crap. The word of Vista running terribly spread like wildfire, and even I was influenced into sticking with XP, and honestly speaking, I only used Vista a couple of times before making this video. But nowadays, more and more people seem to think that Vista wasn't as bad as it was misunderstood, and perhaps even ahead of its time in many ways. It introduced so many new things that we will showcase today that everyone takes for granted. Let's start right away with the login screen. And this was a big change coming off of XP. It looked a whole lot modern with its rounded corners and shiny buttons. And if we select our user here, we can get to the desktop. Welcome to Windows Vista. Now, say what you want about this desktop, but it looked so futuristic compared to XP. The wallpaper, the modernized taskbar, the transparent UI elements, the new default icons, and of course, the new gadgets here on the right side. Everything combined to create this feeling of giant leap forward in Windows design. So, yeah, let's talk about those gadgets for a second. Gadgets were an alright idea. I mean, you could even say that they still exist today with something like Windows 11 via the various widgets available in the start menu. As a big gamer, I really loved this CPU and RAM speedometer thing indicating how loaded my system was. But even simple stuff like having notes or a puzzle or a clock, it was kind of sweet actually to have that on your desktop. Let's move on to the start menu now, and even this little orb, the start orb, looked really awesome, and it was kind of like it was inserted into the taskbar here. The start menu itself though, it looks very similar to Windows 7, but again, it was something that Vista did first and even added a feature called search. Yeah, you kids nowadays with your Windows 10 and 11 have no idea how it was living without a proper search function. It was the dark times if you ask me. Though I guess you could say that the search wasn't exactly fast, since most of the PCs at the time were running hard drives which are really slow. If we looked at Windows 7 for a bit, everyone loved its transparent UI, but most forget that it all started with Vista. And check this out, it looks just as cool as it does on 7. The arrow interface was really awesome, and I guess it only worked if you had a decent graphics card at the time. Those transparency effects wouldn't run on your Voodoo 3, alright? Here's another smart and important addition that Vista had that most people forget, and that is Windows Defender. It provided a basic antivirus that was definitely better than nothing. And this was a big deal as it made most Windows PCs a whole lot more secure right out of the box. And speaking of security, if you were lucky enough to have the Ultimate Edition of Vista, you could access Windows BitLocker. This again was something new and would let you encrypt your drives and protect it from data thieves. And speaking of security even more, Vista had these user account control pop-ups that would ask you, hey, are you okay with this program making changes? Windows needs permission to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, this was annoying, sure, but it added a lot of security because as soon as some virus wanted to do something terrible, it would be prevented by UAC. You know what other edition Vista had? Windows Update. And yeah, it's showing me that there are no updates for this computer, but I mean, yeah. So yes, unlike Windows XP, Vista actually had an update app which would automatically keep your devices and Windows updated. It's kind of shocking how similar it is to the modern update app on Windows, but I mean, I guess it's an update app, so there's not really super innovative things you can add there. Something I really like about Vista though is that you can access some of the classic games that you can on modern Windows. So just by going to Start and then going to All Programs, then scrolling here to Games, you can access things like Chess Titans and Free Cell and Hearts and Inkball. Okay, to be honest, I don't know most of these, but I do know some of the classics like good old Minesweeper and of course Solitaire. And come on, I mean, you can never get enough of Minesweeper. I honestly, I really like this game, though I'm not really good at it. What's really cool, actually, I didn't know this, is that you can actually change the appearance of the Minesweeper UI, and you can have like a little flower garden and stuff like that. So look at that. That's pretty cool. I didn't know this. A little fun fact for the day there. While we're on the topic of gaming though, we have to talk about Games for Windows Live, which came out 6 or so months later after the release of Vista. Sadly, the implementation of Games for Windows Live was absolutely terrible, and it required DRM to play most of its games, which was actually something new at the time. This was infuriating, and some gamers even refused to play the game if it was exclusive to Games for Windows Live. Let's now jump into our computer properties and check out the Windows Experience Index. They kept this benchmark tool in Windows 7 as well, as you may remember. However, they changed how the points were distributed. Here in Vista, we can get a maximum of 5.9 compared to 7.9 in 7. So overall, I think we're getting a pretty decent score here of 4.2 on our HP laptop, but I guess this laptop is actually from 2008 or so, so it is kind of an overkill for the system. Though honestly speaking, I think this tool was mostly used for bragging rights like, yeah, you think your PC is good? Well, my PC gets a 4.8 in gaming graphics. All right, so let's get to the conclusion of this video. Was Windows Vista that bad? You know, as someone who skipped Vista entirely, stuck with XP through 2005 into 2009, and used Windows 7 for the longest time, I have to say that I don't really see much here that I don't like. Some parts look so similar to Windows 7 that if you looked at it at first glance, you would think it's the same thing. Like I was saying through this whole video, there are so many things that Vista added that we take for granted nowadays. Even simple things like the task manager and how memory and CPU was utilized was vastly improved compared to XP. I honestly think that if Microsoft had waited a couple years for hardware to mature and help developers release better drivers, that Windows Vista might have been one of the best Windows versions ever, and I really truly believe that. And hey, if it wasn't such a flop, maybe Windows 7 would have been called something like Windows Vista 2 or something like that. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about Windows Vista, please put them in the comments below. And if you like this video, then I think you'll also enjoy this Windows 7 revisit episode that we made a while back. So I'll leave that video right here if you want to check that out. But that'll be all for me. Take care.